Hi YouTube, Darth here. What's up? It's Wednesday. Today I'd like to talk a little bit about my experience with the second Battlefield 5 alpha before getting to your questions. The alpha started early yesterday morning my time, and I managed to get in a few hours before heading off to work. My goal was to play a little bit with all the weapons as they were the focus of this test. If you're not familiar with the changes, DICE modified the time to kill on most of the weapons from the first alpha to be slightly higher. And I've got to say that I'm really not impressed with this round of the second alpha. The first weapon I went to was the STG-44, and while it was debatably over-tuned in the first alpha, it's woefully underpowered now, even laughably so, especially in the close game. Going from a max damage of 27 to 20 took it from 4 bullets to kill maximum to 5 bullets to kill. Thanks to its low rate of fire, its time to kill is in excess of 400 milliseconds. Believe me, I felt this early and often when I first started playing the alpha in the morning. There were plenty of occasions where I felt I should have killed somebody, but because of the modifications, they were free to shrug off the bullets. This happened repeatedly with the STG-44 and made me wonder if the intention was to simply render the weapon pointless. Because if that's the case, then yeah, the second alpha has taken the STG from weapon number 1 to just slightly better than maining with the pistol. It's really quite bad now. I had the opportunity to play with more of the weapons through the rest of the day. Most feel like they're in a better place, with the MP40 and Irma machine pistol being clear winners now. A high degree of accuracy combined with much slower overall time to kill have meant that these now shine a bit better, whereas before the STG-44 just trounced all the competition. But I can't help shake the feeling that the game just now feels like Battlefield 1 in a World War II skin. The technical merits of the game have gotten a lot better, and there are some quality of life improvements. But if the gunplay is left in slow-mo time to kill, I have to say that I'm not going to be impressed at all. Something I found a bit difficult to pull off were big plays against more than 1 or 2 players unless they were relatively oblivious. If I was facing off against more than one opponent, the slower time to kill basically meant that there was no way I could finish one before the other noticed and ceased my run immediately. The slow time to kill is further compounded by the hit point mechanic. If the first encounter leaves me under 50 hit points, I'm not going to be able to hit a second encounter without a major disadvantage. There's no regen to 100. I thought this was okay in the first alpha. The reason that it hurts even more with the slow time to kill is because it rewards unobservant players that can now simply kill me because I can't kill them in under half a second, whereas their opportunity is potentially half that. Now, I get that Battlefield 5 is trying to promote squad play, but the synergy between the slower time to kill and the hit point attrition just feels really bad. It feels like it slows the game down tremendously and relies on the average player to be invested in squad play, or team play, or anything that doesn't involve padding kill stats. I've played enough Battlefield in the last 7 years to wonder if that's even possible to change. Not to say I haven't had some wonderful squads in the previous alpha, but today it really just felt like not a good change. I'll do a more in-depth breakdown next week of how I felt about the various weapons, but right now I have to say that the gunplay feels very reminiscent of Battlefield 1. Speaking of changes, another one DICE made was to increase the amount of starting ammo that players begin with. Well, I definitely didn't feel like I had to visit the ammo station as much, but at the same time, I really don't feel like ammo is limited in Battlefield 5 now. I didn't think it was that bad in the first alpha either, to be honest. Right now, it feels about the same situation as Battlefield 4 with the larger caliber weapons that have one less magazine. Yeah, you can run out, but it's not really that likely, unless you're missing a ton of shots. Then finally there are the vehicles, which remain completely unchanged. If you follow me on Twitter, I've already mentioned how the tank is a glass cannon and the aircraft are just plain broken. I certainly hope these get some love going into the beta in a few weeks, otherwise it's just not going to be worth playing vehicles in this game. So Battlefield 5 fatigue is set in for me with this latest round of changes. I definitely don't like the switch to Battlefield 1 style time to kill. It makes the game slower and less exciting. And after having played an amazing first alpha, having this served up on top of no other changes feels bad. I still like Narvik, I think it's a pretty good conquest map, and I'm generally happy about some of the other directions. But could we please not return to Battlefield 1's core gunplay timing? That's all I have for my feedback on the Battlefield 5 alpha so far. In the next few days I'll continue playing it, and I'll probably try some more vehicles since I'm relatively infantry fatigued at this point. Plus I have no desire to relive Battlefield 1's time to kill mechanics. Anyways, let's answer some questions from the last week. First question is from Ultra, who asks, "Hey Darth, I like your videos. This is a question for What's Up Wednesday. Will you continue making Battlefield 4 videos? And will you make Battlefield 5 yes or no gun reviews? At some point, Battlefield 4 is going to play itself out for me. I've gone back to it 2 or 3 times after the last couple of releases from DICE have floundered after launch. After Battlefield 1 just couldn't keep up any post-launch momentum, I knew it was time to take a longer break. It was really unfortunate to see that game squander the hundreds of thousands of engaged players it had in just a few months. It really tells a story about the shallowness of the gameplay and how having a low skill ceiling hurt that game's long-term player retention, combined with a slow rollout of new content, and it's not surprising what happened there. If Battlefield 5 craters after launch, well, I don't know how many passes the Battlefield series is going to get from me or the other fans. Battlefield 4 obviously still exists, but as a part-time YouTuber, I'd love to actually be able to grow my channel. Sticking to a 5-year-old game when the flagship products on the series continue to flounder doesn't seem like a viable long-term channel strategy. Ultimately, I'd love to flip to the new hotness. So Battlefield 5 could very well pull a surprise out for us in the next few weeks. There's no reason the gunplay couldn't be tightened back up, and there are potentially a lot of features waiting in the wings. My long-term plan for Battlefield 5 has been that if it has interesting choices and rewarding mechanics, something that Battlefield 1 sorely lacked, I could see myself sticking around with it for quite some time. If it doesn't, well, I might just have to find some other games out there that strike my fancy. Second question is from Pinchy Lobster. Do you think a Star Wars-themed Battlefield as a traditional shooter would be successful? Or are lightsabers and force powers mandatory to draw in fans of both franchises? A Star Wars shooter with Battlefield 4's gameplay seems like it would be a blast. Personally, I'd be pretty interested in a shooter that stayed away from the Force, it's just that nobody has proven it can work. I think the closest we've come is portions of Jedi Knight, which, as evidenced in the title, also couldn't stay away from the Force powers and lightsabers. There was a Star Wars game in production called Star Wars 1313 that promised to be a very interesting take on the universe with a game that was focused on bounty hunters. The gameplay trailers looked very compelling, and I'm kinda sad that the game was cancelled. But the truth is that I don't think the Star Wars universe can stray very far from stormtroopers and lightsabers while keeping the most peripheral fans interested. Take the film Solo as an example. People just didn't care about Han Solo as a film character, and he's a core character in the original series. Now, it's also possible that there are a lot of extenuating circumstances, but when you're talking about a franchise that demands AAA production quality, it's going to be hard to convince an exec that you should be given resources to make a game in a franchise outside of its safe zone. That being said, I'd freaking love to see another Jedi Knight game. I loved the saber and gun combat in the second one, especially in multiplayer. If we were to go with just a straight Battlefield-style shooter, I'm not sure I can divorce the recent memories of Battlefront 1 and 2 from my brain enough to ponder enjoying that experience. Final question is from Tomas Bitter. Hey Darth, what do you think of the idea of a Battlefield game in the Cold War era, let's say 70s or 80s? I don't mean anything like Vietnam War, just the Cold War turning hot. Total war between US and USSR, nukes, huge battles across Europe, maybe even in Cuba, Panama, or Afghanistan. In my opinion, DICE is now quite limited by the lack of options for the next Battlefield game. The only ways I see are either another modern war, futuristic war, or the Cold War. What do you think? I love fictional Cold War conflicts. I read a ton of Tom Clancy growing up as a teenager and played hundreds of hours of Operation Flashpoint when it originally came out. I feel a strong nostalgic attachment to the weaponry of the era and the concept of a winner-take-all in a fictional NATO versus Warsaw Pact conflict. Obviously, the reality would probably be an inevitable nuclear war, and mass extinction is not exactly fun. So we have games that can take on the historical what-ifs and provide guys like me who grew up on Clancy some fantasy fulfillment. I do miss the modern era of shooters, and I can see why Call of Duty and Battlefield have simultaneously exited the field. It was just getting too crowded and too repetitive. Plus, Battlefield 1 being an initial huge positive reaction certainly didn't hurt. In a lot of ways, I think Battlefield 2, Battlefield Bad Company, Battlefield 3, and Battlefield 4 built the modern Battlefield franchise. All are based in the modern era and use Cold War era, modern, and future tech. I think the real appeal of a Cold War conflict is that it hasn't quite hit the information age Battlefield. We got a little taste of how unfun lock-ons and computer-guided weaponry can be in Battlefield 4. Players constantly complained about those weapons in addition to gadgetry like FLIR and infrared. The information age feels like it takes the challenge and fun out of the conflict. So yeah, I think a game set in the pre-1985 conflict could work if we pretend nuclear weapons don't exist. Much like how Battlefield 1 pretends that artillery and shrapnel shells didn't exist. If you want a fun little watch, I believe Battlefield Nonsense did a video pitch on a Cold War era Battlefield. His title for his idea was Battlefield 1982. He put a lot of detail into it, and I was honestly a little sad, but not surprised to see it was never followed up on by DICE or EA. Obviously, they can't use idea submissions like that without having a huge legal ribbon on it. But that kind of speculation does leave me to wonder just where Battlefield will go after Battlefield 5. Are we heading back to modern? I can't imagine Battlefield 2143 is ever going to happen with Titanfall and Anthem being big franchises for EA. There's not a whole lot of space between now and the rest of the 20th century conflicts, so they've got options, but not whole tons. Personally, I'd be pretty happy with a direct follow-up to Battlefield 4. But that's it for What's Up Wednesday. If you've got questions for next week, please leave them in the comments below, and I'll be sure to get to them after rambling about whatever is on my mind. I'm out this weekend, so content will be a little light between here and next Wednesday. But don't panic, as I'll be back in force the following week. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time, YouTube.